Strappattini in late 19th century London with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And this takes them to Budapest and Vienna. And then the third one is coming out in October. That one brings them back to England, and I'm not going to tell you very much about it, except that Alice the scullery maid turns out to be a lot more important than she herself thought. And I had to do some very interesting research for it last summer down in Cornwall, where I went out to an island off the coast of Cornwall that is reached by a causeway. So when the tide rises, you can't get to it. When the tide falls, you can walk out on the causeway to this island, and there's a castle on the island. So that's all I'll tell you. But this book is what I'm going to read from today. Snow White Learns Witchcraft, and this refers, it's the same title as the first poem in here, which refers to the fact that, you know, Snow White gets married to the prince, and she lives happily ever after, except she has a life after that, right? So eventually she gets old, and the prince dies, and she's left a widow, and what then? She's not the fairest in the land anymore, she's got a magic mirror, what's she gonna do with it? And my idea was that eventually she learns witchcraft. So that's what the poem is about. This is a collection of poems and short stories. They're all based on fairy tales. And one of the fun things about this for me, this is sort of a collection that's very close to my heart. It's a small press collection, so it's something I did simply because I loved doing it. And the cover's by Ruth Sanderson, and this is actually me. I got to be the Wicked Queen because Ruth asked me to pose for the cover, so I'm the woman in the apple. What I'm going to read today, oh, and I should say that we have a book launch party tonight at 9. There are posters all over the place. And the books, all of these books I think are in the dealer's room, and this one's at the Mythic Delirium press table as well as other places. I'm going to read you excerpts from a story. The story is called A Country Called Winter. And it was, I wanted to write a Snow Queen story, but I wanted to write it from the perspective of the Snow Queen, and I wanted to write something modern. So it turns out to be, when I wrote it, the story of a girl named Vera. And Vera is actually a graduate student in Boston, but there's a kind of mystery because she wasn't born in the United States. She was born in another country. The name of that country is very difficult to pronounce in English, so it's translated as winter. And her mom has told her very little about her background. And what she learns over the course of the story is that she actually is the hereditary monarch of winter. She's the Snow Queen. But I'm going to read you 3 excerpts. They do take you through the story, but there are parts missing. So if you want to read it, you have to get the book, or you can get the book. But the parts I'm going to read you are about her relationship with Kay. And it's a contemporary story, so it's got this fairy tale background, but it's about now-ish. Okay. I have always preferred winter, probably because I was born in winter, in February, when my mother tells me the capital city was encased in ice, and the doctor had to come by electric sleigh through a snowstorm. I love to see the first leaves change, love to feel the cold breath of autumn coming. Seasonal allergies have something to do with it. June and July, I live on Clarendon. The pollen from all the blossoming trees gives me a terrible headache. But after September comes, it seems as though the air regains a crystalline quality. It feels like clear water, like something hard and soft at the same time. Feathers that can cut. Then the leaves turn and fall like a splendid sunset lying on the sidewalks, and the first snows come, white and fresh, as though the earth is putting on her wedding gown. Christmas has always been my favorite holiday. In my country, gifts are not brought by Santa Claus. The Lady in the Moon herself comes down from the sky in her silver sleigh, drawn by snow geese that have put on their white plumage for winter. Next to her sits the white fox who eats the moon each month before the lady renews it again. With the help of all the stars who look like elves in sparkling tights and dresses, she distributes gifts to children throughout the land. Although my mother had given up many of our native customs, each year she decorated the tree with a moon on top, papier-mâché stars hanging from the branches, felt reindeer, and gingerbread men. We would leave out elderberry wine for the lady in the moon and a plate of oatcakes with a wedge of cheese for the geese and fox. The next morning, the oatcakes always had small bites taken out of it, and the cheese was eaten into a crescent shape. I met Kay during the first snowfall. He bumped into me as I was walking to class, thinking about my paper on the rhetoric of mourning and the poetry of Emily Dickinson. I slipped and fell on the icy sidewalk. Unskilled, he said, then switched to English. I'm sorry, how stupid of me. I should have watched where I was going. Let me help you. He took off his right glove and reached down a pale, firm hand. I recognized him from my class on the Transcendentalists, which was a 500-level course for both upper-class undergraduates and MA students. He was the one who always did the reading and talked about the Transcendentalists as though their ideas mattered for more than the final exam. I had noticed him. He was, after all, tall and blonde and very good-looking. He was hard not to notice, but I had thought of him as simply another undergrad. What made him so much more exciting than the other boys I had dated? Well, he was European, more sophisticated, more intellectual. He could talk about postmodern literary theory, although after several beers his utterances became as convoluted as the puns. His area was modern European literature. He had been taking courses in the American Studies department simply for a distribution requirement. But he could also be moody, go silent for days at a time, sitting on his dorm room window seat and looking out at the snow. I asked him once if all that theory was good for him. Still, there was something in me that was attracted to him. His family came from a small village in Denmark beside a glacier, where the primary industry was the ski season. Sometimes he seemed like a breath of cold mountain air. We had been dating for several months, and our relationship was going well. He was going to stay in Boston for Christmas, and I had already told him that he could come celebrate with me and my mother. When Gerda showed up. It was after Christmas break. We were sitting in our Transcendentalism class, waiting for Professor Feldman, Bob to those of us who were graduate students, but only in office hours and at departmental cocktail parties to show up, when in walked a girl. Well, a woman, but she was not much older than me. She was wearing a pair of red boots that came up over her knees, and her black hair was cut in a Louise Brooks bob. She stood in front of the class and said, "Hi, everyone. I have some bad news. Professor Feldman had a heart attack over the break. We don't know yet when he'll be able to come back to class. I was his TA last semester, so I'm going to fill in for him. I'm a grad student, so don't bother calling me professor. You can just call me Gerda. All right, let's see who did the reading. Pop quiz." She was in my department, but I hadn't met her. She had passed her oral exam over the summer and was already working on her dissertation. After the class, I introduced myself. "Oh, right, Vera," she said. "You and the other MA students don't need to take the final exam. Just turn in a 20-page paper on the last day of class. Have you written a prospectus already? Well, how about turning it in next Friday?" Later, Kay told me that she had "Robber Girl" tattooed across her shoulder blades, right where you could see it if she wore a low-cut dress or maybe a bathing suit. It was the name of her rock band. Yes, she had a rock band with a couple of students from the Berklee College of Music. She was the lead singer and played guitar. They toured during the summer months, doing covers of the Eurythmics and other 80s groups. I wondered how he knew when he had seen her bare back, but it was the sort of information Gerda volunteered freely. Perhaps she had simply told him during office hours. That was after the semester was over, of course, after we had picked up our final papers from her box in the department mailroom. I was relieved to have gotten an A on the paper and for the semester. Gerda was much too smart to mess around with the university's sexual harassment policy. No, she just stood in front of the class in her high red boots, wearing skinny jeans or a short denim skirt and black turtleneck, talking about feminism and sexuality in Emily Dickinson's poems, which was the topic of her doctoral dissertation. If Dickinson could have fucked death, she would have, Gerda said once, clearly not caring what anyone said on her course evaluations. She was a good teacher, I'll give her that. She found meaning in Dickinson's poems that I had not seen. I had admired them for their artistic and intellectual engagement. Gerda revealed their incandescence. Kay always paid particular attention in that class, but then he had always paid attention to Professor Feldman as well. It was only later that I realized there was more to it than caring about Dickinson's poetry. Just before Christmas, he told me that we should take a break, that he had to focus on exams and didn't have time for a relationship. There was no celebration with my mother after all. He insisted that he had to study. By the time I came back to campus in January, he and Gerda were dating. When I found out from my friend Stephanie, who was a work-study receptionist in the main office and knew all the departmental gossip, I spent a week crying myself to sleep at night, sobbing into my pillow. But Kay didn't know that. I didn't bother asking him for an explanation, and recriminations have never been my style. I have always prided myself on my ability to let things go. After all, I've had plenty of practice. When I was a little girl, I let go of an entire country. One day, we ran into each other at a new cafe that had opened at the edge of campus on Commonwealth Avenue. Blue Moon it was called, organic, fair trade, locally sourced. There were scones with chia seeds in them, scones with acai berries, smoothies that combined mango and kale. Vera, he said, I've been meaning to text you. I already know, I said, about you and Gerda. I really like you, he said, as though it were an apology. Like, really like. But Gerda, I don't know, we're just on the same wavelength. But Gerda. I suppose at some level I had known from the moment she walked in with her high red boots. I had simply not wanted to see that he was drifting away from me like snow. Even when she was standing at the front of the class and he was the undergraduate challenging her phallic interpretation of Emily Dickinson's A Narrow Fellow in the Grass. Sometimes a snake is just a snake, he would say. There was something between them, a solidarity. You could tell that despite their differences, they lived in the same intellectual and emotional time zone. They synced. I hope you're happy with her, I said. I'm sure she'll be happy with you. Why wouldn't she be? Any disagreements would be smoothed over by his blue Danish eyes, the perfection of his cheekbones. I'm skipping a section here, so on to the next section. And then, spring failed to come. In April, the snow did not melt. The forecaster shrugged as though to say, sometimes that happens in Massachusetts. But in May, it did not melt either. The temperature did not get above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. When June came and the temperature still hovered around freezing, the Weather Channel started talking about free cold snaps, global cooling, a new ice age. By that time, I assumed Kay had gone back to Denmark for the summer break. Of course, I was still on campus studying for my oral exam and RA for the high school juniors and seniors, taking summer courses, trying out college for the first time. Anyway, I lived in Boston. I had nowhere else to go. But one day, I got a text on my cell phone. V, need to talk to you, please, Kay. Why? I texted back. To talk about us. Well, that wasn't exactly an answer, was it? What about? Please, I'll buy coffee. Blue Moon at 2? Fine. What was I going to do? Refuse to see him altogether? That would just prove to him that I cared, and I didn't. Well, I did, but I didn't want him to know that. Anyway, it was uncivilized. Only high school girls who had watched too much reality TV behaved like that. He was waiting for me at a table near the front of the cafe with a small cappuccino topped with cinnamon, my favorite. He still had perfect cheekbones, but just above his right cheekbone at the corner of his eye was a rectangular Band-Aid. Had he cut himself shaving? No, it was too high for a shaving cut. Well, I would not ask him about it. I was no longer his girlfriend, after all. Let Gerda do that. All right, what is it, I said, sitting down. He slid the cappuccino over to me. I know I messed up, he said. I should have told you about Gerda. I'm really sorry. Really, really sorry. Is there any way we can start over? I looked at him, astonished. Start over like what? Like it never happened? What about Gerda anyway? Where is she? And what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in Denmark? That's over, he said. I broke it off with her. She was kind of nuts and also kind of cruel. It's as though she kept sticking this knife into me, metaphorically I mean, with the things she would say, telling me she loved me and then that she didn't want to see me anymore, then calling me the next day and telling me to come over. It's like she wanted to punish me for caring about her. And she was so negative. She would laugh at me for things like my mom sending me cookies from home. I mean, the embassy, not home. She called me sentimental. I don't know where she is now. She said she was going on tour with Robber Girl and then she just left. The last I heard from her, she was in Austin, Texas. She hasn't texted me since. But honestly, I don't care where she is. Come on, I know I messed up, but I care about you more than I've ever cared about anyone. Please, can we start over? I sipped my cappuccino. I didn't know what to say. On the one hand, he had behaved like a complete asshole. On the other, he had very blue eyes with purple lashes. He looked at me pleadingly. That Band-Aid was incongruous on his perfect face. I have to think about it, I finally said, putting my coffee cup down and pushing back my chair. I tried to be nonchalant, but I almost tipped it over as I stood up. Sure, he said, I get it, I really do. Take as long as you need to, like a week? I'll text you in a week. Thanks for the coffee, I said. I'm going now. You'll let me know in a week, right? He said, looking up at me anxiously. I think I was scared of how I felt about you. I think that's why I messed up with Gerda. A week, I said, making no promises. But I could already feel myself weakening. He looked at me so appealingly, after all, like a child who wanted approval. Would it be so hard to care about him again? Had I ever actually stopped? I texted Stephanie to catch up on the departmental gossip. What happened between Gerda and him? It only took her a moment to respond. I heard they had a big fight. He broke up with her. She threw her Norton Anthology of American Literature at him, and he hid a mirror in his dorm room. He got some glass close to his eye, had to go to the emergency room to get it out, plus a couple of stitches. That girl is batshit crazy. So I'm skipping another section here, and actually it's kind of a long section, and this is the section in which Gerda learns that she is the hereditary queen of this country called Winter, and she doesn't want to be queen necessarily, but finally she accepts the fact that she has to be, partly because the seasons are all out of joint. That's why it's so cold in summer in Boston, other than the fact that Boston weather is crazy anyway. But she accepts that she does in fact need to go back to her country and take the throne. So the last scene last section happens when she has gone back to Winter. A week later, I got a text on my cell phone. It was still my old iPhone with an international plan. I was getting 3G even in winter. Holy crap, it's all over the Daily Free Press. You're like a queen. Do I call you Majesty or what? Summer finally here. I was standing in the greenhouse attached to the palace under the quince trees. I had spent the morning in a meeting with the finance minister and would spend the afternoon in a meeting with the ambassadors of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Should I write back? At least to tell Kay that I was meeting with a representative of his country. Or not, I doubt he was texting me to hear about politics. Why was he texting me? Oh yeah, it was a week after our meeting in the Blue Moon Cafe. Winter here in Royal Palace. Coronation yesterday, so yes, I'm officially queen. Your Majesty, ma'am, whatever. Winky face. The response came almost as soon as I had written mine. So no hope of getting back together, I guess. Man. I had to laugh. The gall of him. I still cared about him. I did, didn't I? Despite the whole Gerda incident. But at a royal reception, I had met the Crown Prince of Trollheim, whose name was Edric. Trolls are a lot better looking than you would expect. He had really pretty blue eyes and excellent taste in British rock bands. We had a long discussion of existentialism once we'd escaped from the reception with a handful of canapes. I didn't know if I wanted to marry him, but I wasn't ruling out the possibility. This was an arranged marriage. He wasn't sure how he felt about the arranged marriage either, but we'd already decided to spend a weekend skiing together. I'd learned to ski as a child and wasn't sure if I remembered how. But if he had to teach me, that wouldn't be such a bad thing, would it? Anyway, winter needed an ally against the frost giants. Or maybe I would look into joining NATO. You can't date me from Boston, I texted back. What if I came to winter? Do you even know how to get here? Pretty sure there's a Lufthansa flight to Finland. From there, I don't know. Reindeer? It could be like a quest, or like a road trip except with sleighs. I looked around me at the glass walls of the greenhouse. Inside, it was all trees and leaves and blossoms. Outside, the snow was just starting to melt. At this altitude, summer came late, even in ordinary years. Here I was, the Snow Queen, what I was born to be, at least according to my mother and Baron Hapsenkopf. I did not feel like much of a queen. However, in the last week, I had met with members of parliament from the three major parties, the heads of various labor unions, the generals who had participated in a recent coup, the matriarch and her council of priestesses, the director of the central bank, and at my insistence, a selection of ordinary citizens chosen by lottery from university professors to plumbers and seamstresses. I had been interviewed by both major newspapers, all three state television stations, and an online journal called WW for Women of Winter. I did not know if I would make a good queen, but I was starting to see what needed to be done, how to restore the economy of my country. It would take a while, but these things always did. Slowly, winter would regain its former reputation and independence from the IMF. All right, I texted. If you can figure out how to get here, come find me. Would Kay make it to my palace of white stone veined with quartz, or get lost along the way among the snows? If he made it, would I choose him or Edric, who was, after all, a prince? I didn't know. But today, I was the Queen of Winter, and I had more important things to think about. For a moment, I stood among the quince trees, whose white blossoms looked like snow on the branches and fell like snow to the ground. Outside, a dusting of snow fell from the roof like blossoms blown by the wind. And then I turned and walked into my palace, where my future, whatever it was, awaited me. Maybe 2 minutes. Anyone have questions? Or 3 minutes? We have 3 whole minutes. 3 whole minutes. Anyone have questions about anything? This story, any story you have? I don't know. These Gerda, these characters, they get into your head. This is not something I personally, Theodora Goss, would ever say. I'm like uncomfortable saying it when I read. But Gerda would say it. It's the same thing for this book. The stuff, for any of you who've read it, Diana, Diana's a little it. So when I write Diana, I have to write like Diana. She's got to speak in my head. And it's like, I don't say those things, but Gerda does. Yeah.
I just want to say I live around the corner from Emily's house.
Do you?
I have for a long time.
Lovely. Very nice. I've been close. I haven't been in the house, but I've been to Amherst. Yeah. Yeah.
How much is that island off of Cornwall like Sunny Shell?
It was actually originally the monastery there. The castle was a monastery, and it was built by monks from Mont Saint Michel. So it's intentionally similar. It's a much smaller place. But yeah, that's how it came to be. One more question, or anybody? And then we'll let the next group come in. All right, thank you so much.